Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 89 of the Citrix Session. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. We're recording this on a Wednesday, so we've lost a couple of our counterparts here, but it's still Bill Sutton and I. Bill, how's it going?
Going well, Andy. Doing okay today. How about you?
Good. Better to do this on a Wednesday than a Monday, or vice versa?
Well, obviously Monday everybody's already set for it, but Monday's a busy day for me, as I know it is for you. So, it's nice to have a break once in a while.
I was just starting to book some travel up to the Northeast a minute ago, and I did it for Tuesdays and Wednesdays every other week for a long time. And then it starts interfering with the podcasting. My reason for bringing that up is I wonder how many people, as we go back to somewhat of normal workflow, things that you adopted during the pandemic are going to be able to maintain the way they were during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's a good point. It'll be interesting to see. You're coming up my way next week, I think, up here to Virginia. I am. Yep.
That's, I wouldn't say the first trip, but that's the first back to the old way of traveling. You've got a family, you can relate to this comment. I think my family's gotten used to me being home all the time. That may be the biggest disruptor in all this.
Yeah, I agree. Same here.
All right. So we, before we jumped on here, decided we would cover this blog that Citrix released this week or last week about Citrix and Nutanix, the next phase in empowering secure and hybrid work. Citrix and Nutanix had a great story. We've continued to tell the story as XenTegra has, and now they're officially coming back to saying, yeah, we're excellent at working together. Do you find this surprising at all that they're publicly announcing their partnership reboot?
No, I mean, it's like some of the other partnerships that Citrix has had over the years. They kind of renegotiate and double down on it. And so I'm not surprised to see this come out. I mean, certainly Nutanix is a key player in the HCI market, kind of in some ways invented almost the HCI market. And, clearly a great platform to host Citrix virtual apps and desktops workloads on. It has been since it came out. That was kind of its first use case, right? Back when we first saw them at one of those partner conferences.
What if I were to say that that Citrix and Nutanix need each other, and specifically Citrix needs Nutanix because it doesn't have a cloud IaaS solution, and Nutanix has one that can be ubiquitously deployed across a bunch of the big players and private players. Do you think that had a lot to do with this?
I think it absolutely had a lot to do with it. Yes.
Yeah, you see Microsoft having their platform to broker VDI connections and its own infrastructure as a service, IaaS cloud to back it up. Yeah, VMware having the same thing, and Citrix kind of needs that landing spot while publicly continuing to talk about the fact they can work with any backend, which is great. And part of the reason why you and I are Citrix guys, at the same time having that one that just fits like a glove.
Yep,
makes a lot of sense.
It does.
And in the opening paragraph here, they reference a couple of successful customers that they've had. So September 21st is when this announcement was made. It was part of the .next conference. And if I jump down here, it talks about Nutanix will become a Citrix preferred choice, will become I guess to highlight the word preferred choice for HCI hybrid and multi-cloud deployments. I think that aligns exactly with what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And I guess specifically in this case, it's the Nutanix AHV/AOS portion of Nutanix, which when you run it in a public cloud data center, you're really talking about Nutanix clusters.
Exactly. Yeah. And, making it more simple to manage. And then, of course, the other thing is the key thing here, I think, is the unified management plane and allowing you to move your workloads back and forth between various public clouds or on premises. As you need to. That's kind of been the holy grail here, being able to do that. And it's not, I don't know that that's something HV had until relatively recently, but definitely a key benefit to those that are running EUC type workloads.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because I've had a lot of conversations with Nutanix. I have several questions. One would be making sure listeners know that Nutanix clusters in AWS or in Azure is really just Nutanix running on bare metal servers that are managed by Microsoft or Amazon, right?
Right, exactly. That's exactly what it is. They've kind of carved out a section of their data centers, I think, to support hosting these workloads.
And do you know if such a thing exists on the in the Google data centers as well for GCP?
Not for Nutanix. I think there might be one other player that has a cloud on Google at this point, or it's in development, but I'm not aware of what anything released.
If they're working on it, I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, actually, my original conversations with Nutanix way back in the day was going to be a big story with Google in terms of how they went to market, because they've got legacy together from where Nutanix came from. I'm over here on the other screen Googling it now to see if there's any news on that.
There is, because I did the same thing. And when you're talking about HCI type providers, VMware has VMware Cloud on Azure. They have VMware Cloud on AWS. I think AWS was first. And I know we have a customer that had some workloads in Google Cloud VMware environment, or they call it something slightly different, but it's very similar to what VMware has done with the other cloud providers. And that's kind of what Nutanix, I think, is doing here, is delivering a similar type of architecture, though obviously Nutanix has some significant benefits driven by their AHV hypervisor.
So I have a specific question on Nutanix clusters on Azure as it relates to Windows client workloads like Windows 10, Windows 11, and so that brings us back to Citrix. If I've got multi-session rights because of Azure related Windows client workloads, if I run Nutanix clusters in Azure, do I get those entitlements as well?
That's a really good question, and one that I don't have the answer to, but I would love to know the answer to that, because that would be really interesting to find out as to whether or not that's tied specifically to the Azure tenant, if you will, or whether that could be in a provider like Nutanix. I don't know the answer to that, but it's definitely a good question.
You can imagine the benefits of that, right? If I had 100 users, just keep simple math, 100 users, and I could do 2 users per virtual desktop workload running on top of clusters, all of a sudden my consumption model just got cut in half.
Right. Yeah.
Or close to half anyway.
Close to half. Yes.
Yeah. And then imagine if I got 5 users per desktop and beefed up the desktop, but still saved some money per desktop, virtual desktop, what that would mean.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you take that same story and spread it out across the other players. Now you got a multi-cloud solution that really is pretty resilient and flexible and cost effective when you want to run workloads based on cost at any point in time. Now you really got something.
Yeah, you can run the really, the ones that are really heavy and need to be close to the client on premises, and then those that are more, more forgiving, I guess, in the cloud, or in a Nutanix cluster. It gives the customers all kinds of options they didn't have before. And it's kind of like we're getting to the point where hybrid cloud is really becoming a reality without all of the complexity that's historically presented itself there.
Yeah. Here's the last piece of this question. Citrix took Citrix Cloud, or virtual app and desktop services, a couple of years ago and made it to where you couldn't integrate it with a public cloud they made it where you couldn't integrate the on-premises version any longer with a public cloud after a certain version number.
Yes.
Since Nutanix and the plugin into Nutanix can be either in a cloud or in your data center, you think they'll be able to enforce that?
I think they'll probably have to adjust the architecture a little bit to address it, because if otherwise, the other option is they could basically say that you have to be to support this, you have to be in Citrix Cloud. I'd be surprised by that, but you never know.
I mean, it could just be as simply as a EULA and support statement versus hard coding the solution where it won't.
Yeah, it's hard coded. It's hard coded today. I've actually tested the newer delivery controller, trying with a VDA, a newer VDA, trying to register with a delivery controller running as a VM in Azure, and it won't register. It throws an error that says this is running in a public cloud, so it's unable to register, something like that.
But in theory, if I'm just talking to Nutanix Prism, whether it's in my data center or in Azure, is there a way to know the difference?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Not that I would encourage anybody to work around the rules,
No,
but I've just been trying to figure that out. Okay, well, the reverse side of this conversation is Citrix will become the preferred enterprise end-user computing solution. We'll call it a platform on the Nutanix Cloud platform. That kind of got murky for a while with Nutanix's acquisition of Frame.
Right.
Where do you see the benefits for both companies in this part of the announcement?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, obviously Citrix has always been a key workload for Nutanix, and I think this doubles down on that. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I don't see Frame that much out there in our customer base. So I don't see much demand for it. I'm sure it's a solid. I've never really messed with it myself, but I'm sure it's a solid offering. But obviously Citrix is much more mature, and with this announcement, it really Citrix and Nutanix are recognizing the benefits of continuing to drive adoption of the Citrix platform running on Nutanix. So I think it's an interesting question in terms of what this means for Frame. I think it'll still be around. I have to wonder whether it's going to be for more of the a different customer base or different verticals.
Mm-hmm. For us, I don't necessarily like, for me, this isn't revolutionary because this is what we've been talking about forever. And I think we've sold maybe one Frame deal, and one Frame deal kind of gets talked about as if it was the end all be all. But when you stop and dissect that one, you find out that it was a very, very simple use case.
Right, exactly.
And a lot of the enterprise features that all of our customers really need in the long run weren't there. So I just kind of say yes. I mean, yes, we feel this way and have felt this way all along.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually been trying to work an issue for a customer that wants to, without going into a lot of the gory details, that with Citrix, that's a unique use case, which basically leveraging something called host to client redirection for certain websites, so they launch on the local device versus on the in the VDA. And that's the kind of thing. Those types of things are the kinds of things that you're not going to find in a lot of solutions, and that's the value of Citrix Ads is having a lot of advanced features that support the enterprise and can enable all different types of work that demonstrates the value of that more mature solution.
Yeah. So, Bill, I think we've covered it. Is there anything about this announcement and the go-to-market strategy? You know what? I'll make this comment. As I read that last piece, Citrix will become the preferred enterprise end-user computing solution on the Nutanix Cloud platform. I think it's interesting. They're specifically calling out the Nutanix Cloud platform. For us, it's Nutanix platform. Period. Cloud or on-premises doesn't matter.
Yes.
You think there's anything? Am I reading too much into that statement, or is it truly just that's where the conversations are going forward? Therefore, that's why it's stated that way.
I think the latter. I think that the Nutanix Cloud platform really encompasses everything, right? The HCI platform, the Prism, and the on-premises clusters, as well as those running in clouds. I think I don't know if they've rebranded it, but certainly I think it encompasses everything. So it may be that we're reading more into it than necessary. But it does say in the next sentence, Citrix Cloud services will enable the capabilities, which kind of goes back to your earlier question about whether or not we'd be able to run on-premises DDCs or controllers and register VDAs to them. It seems like they're referencing cloud services here, so perhaps that seals that.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. I mean, there's no way that gap would be left, at least EULA-wise, would be left open.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think Citrix and Nutanix will both be happy if more customers adopt the platform, not only just because it's great sales for them, but for partners like us, it gives customers a fighting chance on being successful because it's easy to architect around, and it's fast, and it simplifies things all at the same time. You, like I, have had history of rolling out complex infrastructure with Citrix, and that only makes the likelihood of success lower.
Yeah, I mean, those traditional architectures really, almost to have a really solid chance at success, you really kind of had to overbuy or over provision, I guess is a better way of putting it. Whereas with the linear scalability of Nutanix certainly made it a lot easier to add additional users and know that you'd have the same level of performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen a lot of customers that failed before they even got started with the Citrix piece because the infrastructure was just way too expensive, too complex, or both.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We've both seen that a number of times in the past.
Yeah. Well, Bill, I appreciate you joining and
Sure.
wrap this one up. Thanks.
Okay.
Do it again next week. Bye.
Yeah.